So we have our opening screen here for After Effects. You're going to go ahead and select New Composition. The settings, I usually use the HDTV 1080, and then you can up your frame rate to 60 if you want. You don't really have to. It can stay at 30. That's fine. And I'm going to leave my background color as black. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to Layer, New, Solid. That's going to open up this dialog box. You're going to name that solid background. I chose this off-white color. Before I lock my layer, I'm going to click on this little red box, which is my layer label, and I'm going to change it to sandstone because that's the closest color to what my background color is. And then you're going to click the little tick box underneath the lock so that locks the layer. One thing to note, if you look at your screen, on the lower left corner, you'll notice there's 3 buttons. If any of those buttons are white, click on them so that they're blue. It's all the way in the lower left corner. That's so you have all of your layer options available to you. We're going to need all of those layer options available. You need 3 objects on your stage. I'm going to type the word focus by clicking on the type tool, clicking on my stage, and I'm going to type the word focus. I'm also going to scale it down so it's not quite so ginormous. Since this word is blue, I'm going to change the color on my timeline to match it so I know what layer I'm on and what layer I'm dealing with. So I'm going to go back to where that label color is. The default is red, and I'm going to change it to blue. So you see there, that layer is blue. That matches the layer that the text is on. All right, so I'm going to click on that layer again, and I'm going to hit Command D twice. That's going to duplicate my layer. So now I have 3 layers that are identical. They all say focus, they're all blue, and they're all stacked one on top of the other. I don't want all my words to be the same color. I want to change the colors so that I have some differentiation. So all the way to the left, you'll see there's eyeballs. That means to make that layer visible. I'm going to click off of my top layer. I'm then going to select my second layer focus, and I'm going to change the color of that to be something else. Maybe I'll make it green. Since that second layer is green, I'm going to change the label to be green too, so I know what I'm dealing with. Now in the same way, I'm going to take that top layer, I'm going to turn the visibility on. It's blue, if you remember. It was blue for me. And I'm going to change the color of that to something else. Maybe I'll make that one red. And then I'm going to change the layer label to be red as well. All right, so now we have a red focus with a red label, a green focus with a green label, and a blue focus with a blue label. And then my background label is that brown sandstone color. Carson, what's the problem? Did you figure it out? Yeah. Good. All right, so now I'm going to spread these out like so. So I have all 3 of those, even though they're sitting on separate layers, at least I can see them all now. Now, if you go back down to where your layers are on the left-hand side towards the middle, there's this icon that looks like a wireframe cube. Okay?
Which layer do you want us to select that cube on?
What? Not yet. I haven't said anything about that yet. If you see where that wireframe cube is, that is the 3D option to turn on for your layers. What I want you to do is click on the 3 layers that you created. Mine say focus. I don't know what yours say, but turn on 3D for all 3 of those layers. You don't have to do it for the background layer. It's locked anyway, so you can't do it for the background layer. Now, once you've done that, just click on one of the words. Is going to the vending machine more important than this lesson right now? Huh? because you guys were here yesterday. Okay. All right, so if you notice on the bottom of focus, if you move your mouse over the green arrow pointing up and the red arrow pointing right, that's X and Y. If you move that mouse around, it'll change from X to Y to Z. If you leave it on Z and then click and drag, notice what happens. Oops, that's not what's supposed to happen. Z. If you do that, notice that now you can move your words in 3D space. In the past, when we've done scaling, we've simulated 3D. This is actually moving in 3D space mathematically, okay? So what I want you guys to do is to position your words in 3 different positions in that 3D space. That is our Z space. If you work in 3D, the X is horizontal, the Y is vertical, and the Z is the 3D space. So when you look at this, the red focus, which you can only see the S, is what's closest to us. The blue focus is in the middle, and then the green focus is farther away. If you're having a hard time selecting the Z option, there's another way you can move your words around. If you twirl down the arrow to the left of your layer label, and then you twirl down transform, next to position, you'll notice there's now X, Y, and Z. That third value is Z. And if you slide on top of that, you can move your words in 3D space that way as well. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a camera. If you've done any 3D work, if you played with Maya, you know the value of having a camera in your scene. It's going to allow you to animate this scene without having to move each and every object in the scene. So you're going to go up to Layer. You're going to go to New, and you're going to select Camera. That's going to bring up this dialog box that looks really complicated. It is complicated, but we don't have to deal with most of the values in there right now. The only thing you need to worry about right now is that your Enable Depth of Field tick box is checked. That's towards the middle of the box and a little bit down. Everything else can remain the same. Note the name of the camera, Camera 1. When you say OK, it's going to appear next to your other items in your layer stack. I'm going to move my camera to the top of the stack. And then I'm going to open up the options for my camera. There's a whole bunch of values there that we're going to deal with in just a second. So what we're going to want to do is we want to manipulate this scene not from the camera view, but we want to manipulate it from a different view. So what we're going to do is underneath that composition window, notice that there's the option of one view. If you click on it, you can change that to 2 views horizontal. If you select that, you're going to get this. What we're looking at on the left side there is a top view of your scene, as if there was a camera hovering above the scene. And that triangle is the camera's view. So the point down at the bottom of your camera is where the lens is. And the other end of that triangle, the flat end, is the zoom, or where the end of the zoom is. Now the camera can still see what's beyond here. You can see that I can still see my green focus word here. But this is just, the camera has to end somewhere, so this is the zoom. The white crosshair in the middle is what we call a point of interest. Just kind of keep that in mind that we call that the point of interest because we're going to need to move that around when we start moving our camera. So if you've done any photography or any videoing with a digital SLR, you know that in order to get depth of field, you have to crank the aperture up so that whatever's in focus is in focus, whatever's outside of that focal point becomes blurry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to where my aperture is, the fourth option down on camera options here. And I'm going to crank that aperture way up to like, I'm going to do mine at like, I think 800 is what I had it on before. RHP, this is Craig. RHP, this is Craig. Hello. Hello. Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay. So when I crank the aperture up, notice what happens to the words outside of the blue word focus. The red is blurry and the green is blurry. And that's because we just changed our depth of field, okay? If you want to make that even more pronounced, you can turn the blur level up, which is just below aperture, to, I don't know, 150, and it gets even blurrier. This is really useful if you're doing something like an animated infographic, where you want to have certain facts or symbols scattered around a scene. You can move the camera around that scene to make it animated without having to move each individual piece. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to animate this camera. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to change my focal point. I'm going to change where my camera has things in focus. Right now, it's the same as the zoom distance. So you can't really see that there's a white line here at the end of this triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to focus distance, which is the third option down underneath zoom. And I'm going to slide that to the left. And as I do that, notice that now there's a white line on my camera's triangle, almost at the halfway point. That is where everything is in focus. So now you might notice that my S is in focus, but my blue isn't. My blue focus isn't in focus anymore because the S is closer to that focal point. All right, I'm done with my camera option, so I'm going to twirl that back up, and now I'm going to twirl down the transform option underneath my camera. And notice that there's a position option that is keyframeable. Just like we moved our words around inside of Premiere and After Effects, we're going to keyframe the position of our camera so that it's moving and focusing on items we want it to focus on at a very specific time. So what I'm going to do is turn on keyframing for position and point of interest. Remember, you click on the little stopwatch just to the left of the layer to turn on keyframing. And that's going to create my first keyframes for this animation. I'm then going to reposition my camera so that it is a little bit further back, and then we're going to start animating it so it focuses on the red first, then the blue, then the green. Those colors and those words are probably different from what you have, and that's okay. So there's a couple different ways you can move your camera. You can use the sliders, so it's X, Y, and Z, or you can actually move it inside of the camera window, but you have to find your X, your Y, and your Z value. It's not always easy. So right now I'm on Z. If I click and drag, I can move my camera to my starting position. All right, so that is my first keyframe. I'm going to move my playhead over to the 1 second mark. I'm going to take my point of interest crosshair, click and drag it so it's right on top of my red focus word. And then under position, I'm going to slide my X value to the left so that my camera is in line with that first red focus word. I'm then going to move my camera so that that white line is right on top of the word focus. And lo and behold, the word focus is now in focus.
Did you pre-order the pizza?
No.
Cool.
Me too.
No. Can I have one? 3, 4, 3, 4.
What 3 you think?
He's good.
Do what you think. All right. So this is what we have so far. If you drag your playhead back to the beginning, we're all out of focus. Slide it over. That first word is in focus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight those 2 keyframes that I made. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to move my playhead down about halfway between 1 and 2 seconds, and then I'm going to paste them. Now, the reason you do that is so that your camera, after it animates, it's going to sit still for just a sec so you can read the word. Obviously, if you've got more stuff on your screen that you need to read, you should make this pause longer. But for what we're doing, that's probably going to be long enough. All right, so the next word that we're going to do is the blue focus. So I'm going to move my playhead down to the right. I'm going to select my camera. I'm going to take my point of interest and put it right on top. Whoops. Take my point of interest. Can't grab it. No. So sometimes you can't just grab it like that. I'm going to try to zoom in. Maybe it'll let me if I zoom in. No, it's not letting me. So I'm going to use the sliders to move my point of interest over. And maybe I can grab it. And then I'm going to put it right on top of the blue focus. And then I'm going to use my slider to swing that X value over so my camera is right in front of the blue focus. And then I need to get my Z value so I can move my camera forward. And now the blue word is in focus. Just like we did before, I'm going to copy those keyframes, move my playhead forward, paste them. So I've got a pause here. So far, this is what we got. Beginning, red, stop, blue, stop, and then we've got a pause. All right, so lastly, we want to get my last focus, and that one's green for me. So like I did before, I'm going to move my playhead forward. I'm going to take my point of interest, and I'm going to put it right on top. If I can find it. Not sure where my green word is. Oh, there it is. A little hard to see. And then I'm going to swing my camera over with the X value so it's right in front of the green. Actually not. Oh, there's the green. I'm sorry. I couldn't even see it in my. Let's move this again. Move this up here. It's right on top of the green. Swing the camera over a little bit more. And then if I can find my Z value, I can move my camera forward. So it's sitting right on top of the green. And now it's in focus. I'm going to take my playhead and move it down again. Copy those values, those last keyframes, and then paste them so I've got a pause here at the end as well. And then just as a final touch, I'm going to copy my first 2 keyframes. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll have it end on red focus. I'll take that red 2 keyframes and copy them, and then I'm going to paste them at the end of my animation. And then I'm going to lastly move my end point or my out point just past the end of the animation. So you can test what you did by just dragging your playhead over. We've got that, and then that, and then that. And then it's going to end on red. So now I'm going to add this little composition to my render queue. And I'm going to name it Focus 3D Camera or something like that. And then I'll hit save and render. And that is it. So let's see what we ended up with. If you're on one of the newer Macs, for whatever reason, QuickTime won't open QuickTime movies that are made inside of After Effects. So you might have to open it in Premiere to check it out. But that's our final piece. So hopefully you can see if you have an infographic or if you have some items that you want to emphasize during your animation. I can think of the PSA for JTNN would make a lot of sense to do all of your factoids like this and then have the camera focus on very specific data points as you go through your animation. It's a really nice effect. Your brain understands 3 dimensions. It understands when things are out of focus or in focus. So the illusion of there being 3-dimensional space really works here. So I encourage you guys to utilize this. Just kind of keep it in your motion graphics toolbox. You can use it if you're going to do a motion infographic for the Reno FFX Film Festival, or you might want to incorporate it into one of your projects, possibly even your title sequence. This is definitely something that gets utilized a lot in motion graphics and in a lot of title sequences. If you've seen How I Met Your Mother, the opening to How I Met Your Mother was done this way. Instead of words, they used photos, but it works exactly the same way. And now you probably have the How I Met Your Mother theme song in your head. All right, guys, that is all. So